funny thing, I was out driving the other day, and I came across this printing shop, and on its ad board it said, "The purpose of life is a life of purpose." And you can tell why it caught my attention, because you just wouldn't normally see that type of quote on a printing shop's ad board. Usually businesses like that, or any business really, they typically use their ad board as a form of promotion, right? To put into sight what's presently out of sight. They're saying, they're using that ad board to say, hey, this is what we offer. This is what we can provide. These are the services that we have, or this is the sale that we have going on. And usually what they put on their ad board is a direct correlation to what they serve, or what they provide, or what they sell. And so you can see why this was somewhat of a unique quote, because it had nothing to do with printing, right? It said the purpose of life is a life of purpose. And when I read that, I started thinking just about life in totality. And if Christianity is the lens by which we look through life, then we should also believe that God has gifted each and every one of us, or that God has created each and every one of us with a purpose, right? Like, no one should think of themselves insignificant. No one should think of themselves as irrelevant, because God has purposefully created each and every one of us, right? And it reminds me of a quote by Dr. Miles Monroe, and it says that the purpose of something is the reason for which it's made, and its design is determined by its purpose, right? So even if we look at God, when he was talking about Jeremiah, and he was talking to him, he said, "Before I formed you in the womb, I knew you," right? Before you were born, I set you apart. So before you were even created, I knew who you were, I knew who you would be, and I had a plan for your life. Then I created you specifically. I designed you, created you specifically for the plan and for the purpose that I had for your life. So we are purposefully designed, right? Purposefully designed. Our design is determined by our purpose, right? So the purpose of something is the reason for which it's made, and its design is determined by our purpose. And this is where we start to see the lesson title begin to creep and rise up to the surface, right? Gifted to gather to God. And since God has created each and every one of us with a purpose, right? Since we are designed with intent, then he's also inserted certain gifts, talents, characteristics, and traits within us, so that we can live according to the plan and the purpose that he has for our lives. And so that quote that I saw on the ad board from the printing shop is definitely true, right? Because the purpose of life is definitely a life of purpose. But if we are to understand why we are the way that we are, the plan that God has for us, if we're to understand ourselves, then we have to go to the Creator to understand who we are and understand the plan and the purpose that he has for us. See, after the fall, when Adam and Eve rebelled, and that relationship was severed, right? God didn't redo or reverse creation. No, but rather now we were born, with this sinful nature, and we have this void within us. And in that void lies fulfillment, lies identity, and lies purpose. And those are only things that can be found in God, right? But God did that because he still desires for us to be in relationship with him, just as he originally intended and created us to be. And because those are things that only God can feel, we always see people spending the majority, if not all of their lives, investing themselves in what the world has to offer, or what society places preeminent value on. And we see that. We see people investing themselves in these things over and over again in this cyclical manner, trying to find identity in this, trying to find fulfillment in that, or trying to find purpose in that, but ending up empty and ending up in this state in which they still don't know what their purpose is, and they don't know what their identity is. And all the while, God is saying, hey, those things that you're searching for, those things that you're investing in and trying to find fulfillment and joy and satisfaction and identity and purpose in, can only be found in me. You see, there was, if we go back to one of our earlier lessons, I believe it was Living Inside Out, we looked at a poll that was done on people who were terminally ill. And so it was pretty much matter of fact that they were going to die soon, right? And they did a poll on people who were terminally ill, and the number one regret for those people was that they wish they would have lived a life that was more true to themselves, as opposed to living a life that everybody else expected for them to live. And it's so amazing how the close proximity of death starts to put life in perspective, right? It's just amazing how the closeness of death brings this awareness of life. And, but what I found out is that, it's so difficult for people to live a life that's true to themselves when they don't even fully comprehend who they are, because they don't understand whose they are. And you see, people will always go with the flow or do what's ever popular or value it because everybody else is valuing it, and live a life apart from their true purpose and apart from their true identity, because they've never truly found out who they are and whose they are. You see, just like it says in Proverbs, let's go to Proverbs chapter 1, verse 7, I believe, right? Very popular passage. Well, Proverbs chapter 1, verse 7 says, the fear of the Lord is the beginning of knowledge. The fear of the Lord is the beginning of knowledge. The relationship with God, the reverence for God, right? The place that God has in your heart, in which he should be reigning supreme, right? And then if we go to Proverbs 16, chapter 16, verse 20, it says, whoever gives heed to instruction prospers, right? And blessed is he who trusts in the Lord. And so it's about letting God be the priority in our lives, in our hearts, in our minds, right? It's placing him number one in our value system. And this is very important that we understand the necessity of having God number one in our value system. It says in Proverbs chapter 1, we just read it, right? Verse 7, that the fear of the Lord, that's the beginning of knowledge. Being in relationship with God is the beginning of knowledge, right? Reverencing God, placing him at the highest point in our hearts, in our lives, and in our minds, and in our value system, right? His word reigns above everybody else's, right? That's the beginning of knowledge, because we place him in a position to instruct and inform us about all of life. He's the beginning of knowledge because he is the creator of life, right? So just for illustration's sake, let's go up and put two value systems up. Let's put one that lines right up with this particular passage, that the fear of the Lord is the beginning of knowledge, the relationship, the reverence for God, having him number one in our value system, right? And so if we put this up, and let's just put some other things up, but the most important thing is that we have God number one, right? So for the sake of illustration, let's have God at number one. Let's put, for the sake of this lesson, let's put gifts and talents. Let's put money. Let's put love. Let's put relationships. Let's put justice, equality, sin. And the list can go on and on, because these are aspects of life, right? But the emphasis and the illustration is to show that if God is number one and you're listening to him for knowledge and instruction, because he just said that in Proverbs chapter 16, right? Verse 20, that those who take heed to instruction will prosper, and those who trust in the Lord with all their heart will be blessed, right? And so if we're trusting in God for everything to inform us and instruct us about life, then we understand the things of life better, right? But if we have another value system, and let's just let's just reverse the top three. So let's put money number one, let's put gifts number two, and let's put God number three, and then, the rest to follow, to mirror the other side of the value system. But here we can see there's a difference, right? Because God's voice has already been diminished a bit, right? We're saying that, okay, God, I trust you over these things, right, that are below you. I'll listen to your word. I'll follow your instruction regarding these things. But these things I've placed above you, where I will lean to my own understanding. And what does God say? Lean not to your own understanding, but in all your ways acknowledge him, and he will make your paths straight. Right? But when God's word is diminished and he's not number one in our value system, then who's teaching us about those things that are above him? And you see, when God is not in a position to teach us and instruct us and give us the knowledge, the correct knowledge, then we end up misusing, perverting, or abusing those things that we place above him because we don't even know the true meaning of them. And that's key. That's important. Because when we think about our gifts, for the sake of this lesson, when we think about our gifts and our talents and the reason for which we have those, it's so easy for us to use or misuse our gifts or abuse our gifts because we're teaching ourselves about what we should do with them, as opposed to going to the one who created us and asking him, how do you want me to use what you've given me?